Laria was forced to attend a setup meeting with some stranger, all on the Crown Prince's orders. Her first meeting with her fiancé was a total nightmare. It was Xenox Crassium, the very guy who kidnapped her. 3 years ago, Laria's own Fox clan called her a screw-up because she couldn't transform properly. All she could manage was turning into a tiny fox with fluffy white ears. The happy moment didn't last long, because Laria was struggling like crazy to turn back into a human. And that's when, at her lowest point, Xenox from the Black Wolf clan found her and snatched her up. Laria was stuck living as a house fox for 6 months before she finally managed to escape the mansion. Even after that, Xenox spent 3 years hunting for his beloved fox, the one he called Whitey. One day during his search, he asked the first person he saw for help, and bam, he struck gold. Laria refuses, not knowing that she'll end up engaged to Xenox anyway because of the prince's meddling. By order of the Crown Prince, she's destined to be the miserable bride of her kidnapper. Laria can't let Xenox find out she's a beast person, or he'll know the truth. Xenox told her he managed to dig up some dirt on his favorite fox, Whitey. This news really freaked Laria out, because she was afraid Xenox had blown her cover. Right now, the Black Wolf seems gentle to her, and she doesn't get why everyone thinks he's so ruthless. For a long time, Laria Rohan tried to learn how to shift back into human form, but she couldn't do it. Beast people are those whose blood is a mix of human and animal. Way back when, they were called a new race that came out of nowhere, and people pointed fingers at them. But after a bunch of wars and skirmishes, they managed to become the top dogs in society. Now they're either in human form, or at best, they've got ears and a tail. Lari Rohan was pissed she was losing to the wolves when it came to transformation abilities. Every time at the Fox Clan meetings, she heard the whispers behind her back, and she was so over it. Everyone thought she was a pathetic white fox mutation, and felt sorry for her dad, Count Rohan. Lari wished she could at least grow a tail or ears, no matter what size they were. Deeply frustrated, she tried to transform into a fox, and this time, she actually did it. A surge of crazy energy ignited in her chest, and her body glowed, ready to change. A couple seconds later, a cute kitten with fluffy ears and a tail she'd always wanted stood where Lari had been. The girl didn't expect to fully transform into an animal, and it was kind of freaking her out. Modern beast people can't fully transform. They just rock the tails and ears. That's how it was supposed to be for Larry. But reality had other plans. She didn't turn into a grown-up fox, but a baby, and her family is totally gonna make fun of her. But that's not important right now. She needs to change back and hurry home to figure things out. Laria tried to transform, but she couldn't shake her animal form, even after 10 tries. Suddenly, the kitten girl felt like the world around her went totally dark. The carriage she arrived in was way too far away, and Laria had no idea how to get back home. Just as she was lost in thought, a huge dude's hand suddenly grabbed her. Laria didn't know how to break free from this stranger's grip, and was worried she wouldn't make it home tonight. This guy definitely liked the little fox, and he wasn't planning on letting it go. So Laria decided to attack and bit him, showing him he needed to let her go. Xenox easily handled her aggression and tucked the little fox into his inside pocket. He announced they were going home, and from that day on, the little fox would be his pet. Laria saw it as a kidnapping, and she realized she wouldn't be able to go home looking like this. 3 years after that, Laria arrived at the tea house, but she was scared to go inside. She was there to meet her future fiancé, whom she'd never even seen. But inside was none other than Xenox. Laria never imagined she'd meet Xenox Crassium at a pre-wedding meeting. She had no idea that her past abductor would turn out to be her future husband. Laria had to spend the evening with this guy without revealing her true identity. They already knew each other's names, even lived together, but pretending to be strangers was agonizing. With some trepidation, Laria introduced herself to Xenox using her real name, Laria Rohan. On the table, she saw a flyer with a perfect description of a white fox named Shiro that Xenox was looking for. Laria flashed back to when Xenox first took her in, made her his little pet. He always treated her so gently, which is why he's freaking out about the missing fox. Over time, Laria started seeing Xenox as a seriously attractive guy, full of tenderness. She got used to his touch, his caresses, never expecting anything bad from Xenox. But then, out of nowhere, Xenox hit her with his magic, and Laria's body felt like it was on fire. Xenox was way too attached to that fox, and through the flames, he whispered that it would always be with him. Little did he know, the fox that ran away is sitting right in front of him now, as his bride. Xenox's voice snapped Laria back to reality, and terrified of being found out, she spilled coffee all over herself. The guy was about to bring up the fox, but Laria just froze up completely. She grabbed the missing fox flyer and started using it to mop up the coffee. Xenox's twisted affection and his scorching magic were all just Laria's fantasy. The heroine pretended they were strangers and asked the guy his name. Xenox Crassium, he said, the name she knew so well. But his voice sounded way too tired to Laria. This guy's got the blood of the rare Black Wolf clan running through his veins, and they've always been at war with the White Fox race. Xenox is the head of the Crassium family, the only Grand Duke lineage in the whole empire. The Black Wolf blood is so strong in him that Xenox only finds meaning in life on the battlefield. People talked about him like he was some kind of savage beastman eater. Everyone knew the rumors, but the Xenox Laria lived with for 6 months was nothing like the stories. She saw the real him, nothing like those awful rumors spread by jealous jerks. Xenox realized the matchmaking with Laria was set up because she belongs to the White Fox clan. So the heroine got railroaded into a beauty pageant thing, and Xenox was dealing with something similar. The hero looked annoyed and said he had zero interest in getting hitched. Xenox just muttered that Laria was just like Shiro, and she choked on her coffee again, totally surprised. She pretended she knew all about this missing little fox from the flyers plastered all over town. Laria whispered hopefully to Xenox that the little fox would definitely be found, thanks to his hard work. The hero just snapped back that he had to find Shiro no matter what. Suddenly, a frantic dude burst into the coffee shop, telling the boss that Shiro had been found. Xenox bolted without even saying goodbye, and Laria knew that wasn't the real Shiro. It was someone else, because the real Shiro was talking to Xenox right now. With some free time on her hands, Laria decided to pay Mr. Tsurik a visit. Tsurik, the Raven Beast Man, said right off the bat that Xenox suspected someone was digging up dirt on him. After escaping from Xenox, Laria kept tabs on him, chasing after her own agenda. More specifically, she was looking into that fire that tore through the Crassium estate 3 years back. On that awful day, intruders broke into Grand Duke Xenox's mansion. These guys were after a rare family heirloom belonging to the Crassium line. This treasure holds some serious juice, enough to unlock a mage's potential. That magical Crassium family relic is currently in the hands of Laria's brother, Zurike. Xenox is desperately hunting for the fox kid, Shiro, to get his family treasure back. The intruders are still on the loose, so Laria's family could be in some serious trouble. After that chat, Laria crossed paths with Xenox again, and she's got to keep her secret under wraps. The heroine was terrified the Duke had seen through her deception and figured out she was really the fox cub. But Xenox just asked her to help him find the missing cub, since it still hadn't turned up. Laria didn't know what to do. She'd have to search for herself while playing the part of a stranger. Just a few minutes earlier, Laria had left Tsurike and gone shopping. She instantly regretted not just heading home on this rainy night. She ran into Xenox, who was slumped against a wall, totally drained and covered in blood. The unexpected meeting made Laria drop her umbrella, and she needed to hide her panic, fast. A wave of sympathy washed over her for Xenox, searching for his pet even in this downpour. The Duke looked exhausted, and you could see the hope draining from his eyes. Through the rain, he thought Laria was the missing Shiro, but she quickly snapped him out of it. She tried to act like she didn't see the blood on the ground and all over Xenox's body. Her kindness won out, and Laria offered to help the Duke with his wounds. Xenox told her not to worry about him, saying it was someone else's blood. Usually, Xenox would make a huge fuss over even the tiniest scratch on his little fox. Laria couldn't just leave him covered in blood like that, and held out a handkerchief to him. The Duke was suspicious of her concern, but she insisted she wouldn't leave until he took the handkerchief. Xenox suddenly grabbed her hand, and Laria was terrified he'd recognize her right then and there. She pointed out that he was being rude, and Xenox snapped back to reality. Laria realized it was her furry ears that were the problem, and decided to hide them before Xenox saw. The Duke noticed, but instead of dwelling on who she might be, he just thanked her for her concern. Back when Laria lived at his estate, Xenox always smiled at her, but this time the smile was different. He asked her, almost as a last resort, to help him find the little fox, Shiro. Xenox and Laria's hands intertwined, and she wasn't expecting to get that close to her kidnapper. Laria figured the Duke suspected something, and she needed to stay sharp so she didn't accidentally spill the beans. Xenox realized she was from the White Fox tribe, which meant she should know their habits pretty well. Everybody knows that beast-like creatures often inherit the traits of their animal ancestors. Laria wanted to refuse, but Xenox offered her a hefty reward once the search was over. He showed her a pendant with a magic stone, and that's when Laria understood the meaning behind that sly grin. In her opinion, Xenox was only searching for her so desperately because of that family heirloom. Lately, there'd been a ton of fake reports about Shiro sightings, but they all turned out to be traps. Xenox got a threat recently, saying they'd kidnapped Shiro, but it turned out it wasn't Shiro after all. Laria needs to drop the search, because if Xenox finds out who she really is, her whole family will pay the price. The heroine confessed that it'll be tough for her to help with the search. What with the wedding prep and all, Xenox was pretty cheesed off that Laria couldn't free up some time for his request. He announced that he'd definitely hit her up when she finally had some time to spare. Laria agreed, but didn't really think about the fallout from them searching together. She was feeling pretty good about herself, thinking Xenox didn't suspect she was his missing, thing. But that creepy smile of his is bugging her, and she's trying to shake off this bad feeling. Xenox said goodbye to Laria until next time, and then headed over to see the prince. The crown prince of the Flander Empire, Golden Elk himself, is Ishwel. To everyone's shock, Duke Xenox announced he'd finally met his destiny today. He even asked Prince Ishwel for help planning his wedding with Lady Laria Rohan. After meeting with Xenox, Laria was able to return to the Rohan family estate. Just then, Laria's brother, Helden Rohan, arrived home. He's a serpent beast man from the Northern Sea, and the crown prince's personal physician. Laria gasped a little at the sight of him, totally not expecting her brother at this hour. She wondered if Helden got fired, but he reassured her he just got some time off. Helden got home late that evening, and he freaked out when he realized his sister wasn't there. Laria had to confess to her strict brother and the servants that she'd been at a pre-wedding meeting. Helden, now totally ticked off, wondered if Laria suddenly had a thing for marriage, or if their parents were forcing her into it. He found out from his sister during the argument that her partner was Duke Crassium Xenox. Helden was ready to off that psycho Xenox just to stop this marriage from happening. Laria snapped her brother back to reality, explaining that killing a member of the royal family would be considered treason, but she understood Helden's motive, since foxes and wolves are constantly at each other's throats, despising each other. Her brother doesn't get why Crown Prince Ishwel wants to tie Xenox's life to Laria's. He decided to handle this situation himself, and told Laria to stay far away from the Crassiums. He couldn't let her marry a guy who's completely obsessed with his hobbies. The heroine knew that Duke Xenox Crassium would never agree to a marriage ordered by the prince. But then she got a letter from the prince saying another meeting with her fiancé had been arranged. The prince insisted Laria attend, because Duke Crassium was really looking forward to seeing her. Laria never thought she'd be back in the house of her former kidnapper, Xenox, so soon. That very day, she started getting ready for her upcoming meeting with Xenox. The servants couldn't hold back their tears. They felt so bad for their mistress. Laria tried to calm them down, explaining she was just going for a talk, not her execution. But the servants believed the rumors that Duke Xenox was a monster who preyed on beastkin. They thought Xenox had recently gone off the deep end, and, on top of being a jerk, had become completely unhinged. Laria realized the rumors about the wolves' hereditary disease that caused aggression had spread like wildfire. She explained to the servants that even though Xenox was a little eccentric, he had his good points. Through tears and regret, the servants let Laria go to her unexpected rendezvous. By order of Crown Prince Ishwel, Duke Xenox arrived at the estate to pick up Laria himself. The heroine never expected to run into her kidnapper right at her own front gate. Even though Xenox was showing the mistress extra care and attention, you could see he wasn't really feeling it. As soon as Laria got in the carriage, she spotted the stones that let you use any kind of magic. Laria was hoping for a quick trip, because she was afraid Xenox would figure out her secret. On the way, Laria asked the Duke why the prince was summoning her if the matchmaking hadn't worked out. Xenox didn't spill the whole story, just said people think Laria is his fiancée. He hadn't been to the palace in ages because he'd been searching for the fox, so nobody had heard from him. The Duke declared that his main goal is catching the little fox, Shiro. The heroine immediately told him she wasn't happy that he'd just replaced the missing fox with someone else. Xenox didn't agree with her, because his favorite fox is only Shiro, and nobody else could ever take her place. Laria couldn't shake the feeling that all this guy wanted was the family heirloom. The thought that the Duke might recognize her as his pet gave her the creeps. Laria said she hoped the fox would be found soon, but the Duke was 100% sure of it. He added that he almost had his little fox by the tail, which made Laria super anxious. The Duke gave a sly smile, saying he'd be testing his theories soon. Laria hadn't done anything suspicious during these 3 meetings, but the worry wouldn't leave her chest. She could see suspicion about her identity in Xenox's cunning gaze. But his look was a little different during their first meeting, and it seemed like Xenox hadn't noticed anything. Despite white foxes being rare, there are still a few hundred of them out there. None of them, or any other beastkin, can fully transform into their animal form. Right now, Laria's the only one who's reached this level, and even her family doesn't know about it. Xenox saw the worry and anxiety in Laria's eyes, and asked her what was up. She reassured him, explaining that she'd never felt so good being around the Duke. Xenox promised her, now just like he did before, that he'd give her anything to make her comfortable. Years ago, the Duke treated his pet with extra special care. Xenox was too nice, and that's why he couldn't make any friends except for the little fox. Laria thinks that if he did have friends, they'd take him for everything he's got. They wouldn't be able to handle the times when Xenox turns into a total mother hen. After a while, Duke Xenox's carriage arrived at his duchy. The hero promised Laria he'd explain the whole situation to Lady Rohan himself. The main character just couldn't bring herself to tell her mom about the wedding plans with Krasium. Xenox apologized for the trouble and announced that the wedding preparations would begin tomorrow. Before that, he's planning to visit His Highness with Laria. Stepping into the duchy, Laria realized she'd never seen such beautiful places. A massive energy barrier was visible above one of the towers, protecting the entire duchy. Laria was freaked out that she could feel the energy of a powerful mage everywhere she went, someone who could expose her. She'd spent years in this palace before, and this was the first time she'd ever felt anything like this. Her whole body started shaking, just like when she first met her kidnapper. Soon, Xenox and Laria arrived for an audience with His Highness, Prince Ishwel. Laria didn't show the prince her nervousness and politely introduced herself. Xenox left her alone with the prince, because His Highness called him away right before the entrance. Ishwel suggested they pick a date together for her wedding to the Duke. Laria thought the wedding with the Duke was some kind of sick joke, so she couldn't believe what she was hearing. She left the prince because she wasn't feeling well. The thought of marrying her abductor was messing with her head. Before she left, Ishwel told her the ceremony would be held at the Krasium estate. He said His Majesty was super stoked about the wedding. He even sent out invitations to all the families. Laria realized her parents would get a letter about her engagement to the Duke, and they'd never forgive her. When she saw Xenox, she told him what Prince Ishwel had said, but Xenox just calmed her down. The hero suggested they move somewhere else, so they could talk without anyone watching or listening. In the garden, he explained to Laria that nobody buys the whole nothing's going on act between them. He said he tried to explain the situation to the crown prince, but the guy totally misunderstood. Laria believed Prince Ishwel pushed for their wedding and sent out letters to everyone, so it wouldn't be called off. Xenox tried to tell her that His Highness had a political motive for their marriage. The Krasium family is the only grand ducal house in the empire, with massive wealth and power. Plus, Xenox has imperial blood through his mother, who was a princess. The Rohan County's power is just in name, and that family isn't exactly rolling in dough. That's why marrying Laria could become a burden for Xenox and his family. Through this marriage, the rulers want to keep the House of Krasium in check and fulfill a long-held desire of the Crown Prince. For years, Crown Prince Ishwel and his allies have wanted to bring the wolves and foxes to peace. To screw up those plans, Laria considered getting her brother to start a rebellion. Suddenly, Xenox cut through her thoughts and proposed they get engaged. Just to start. You can't just jump to marriage without an engagement, and the heroes can use it as an excuse to buy some time. They'll break it off later, and Xenox is ready to handsomely compensate Laria for her part in all this. The girl wasn't sure about it, but the Duke mentioned he'd be sending her precious gems every month. She gets to pick the weight and size of each stone for the entire duration. Xenox promised to send as many stones as there are months in the engagement. And when the heroes call it quits, Xenox will gift Laria a freaking diamond mine. This offer got Laria all worked up, and she couldn't possibly turn it down. For her own reasons, she even suggested they get engaged more than once, and he was totally down with it. A little later, Xenox and Laria's carriage arrived at the Rohan family estate. Laria didn't want to drop Xenox's plan on the Earl and Countess. It would have freaked them out. First, she and Xenox needed to cook up a story, a way to play their parts for her parents. They didn't even get a chance to brainstorm, because the Earl and Countess barged in. Laria's mom was seeing red after reading that letter from Crown Prince Ishwell. She was losing it that her daughter secretly met up with Chryseum and decided to marry him. Xenox apologized to Laria's parents for being late and suggested they hash out the details of the letter over lunch. Laria immediately started to worry that her mom might have slipped something nasty into the Duke's tea out of spite. Her mother's name is Samira Rohan, and she's a serpent-like beast person from the Northern Sea. She's seriously ticked off about the situation, but Xenox explained that the letters were a surprise to him, and Laria too. Laria's dad, Theodore Rohan, a white fox shapeshifter, admitted he was taken aback by what the imperial letter said. Duke Xenox paused for effect, then dropped the bomb that his relationship with Laria was the real deal. Samira and Theodore Rohan were completely speechless, mouths hanging open. Xenox went on, saying he and Laria were planning on getting engaged ASAP. Samira was hit with a wave of fury, thinking the Duke was holding something over her daughter. The main character and Xenox need to smooth this over, quick, before they stir up a hornet's nest. Laria was terrified that both Xenox and her future diamond mine would be at risk. But she couldn't tell her mom that this engagement was just for show and would be called off later. Hugging Xenox tight, she took control of the situation and announced that she and the Duke were head over heels for each other. She convinced everyone there that it was love at first sight, a total whirlwind romance. Samira, clearly suspicious, asked what exactly Laria found so appealing about Xenox. Remembering her past life, the heroine said the master really got her, always giving her what she wanted. Xenox always looked out for her, and she never felt like she didn't matter. She gave everyone a quick rundown of all the good things about Xenox she noticed when she was a little fox. Samira and Theodore couldn't wrap their heads around how she could fall for a guy with such a bad reputation. After talking to her folks, Xenox headed home, leaving Laria alone with her thoughts. All night long, the heroine couldn't figure out why her parents were so against her and Xenox. She's dying to know why everyone thinks Xenox is a terrible person who doesn't deserve love. If one thing hadn't happened between her and the Duke, Laria would have thought he was a real piece of work. That night, she dreamed about the day Xenox first brought her to the Chryseum estate. Back then, he didn't feel anything for the little fox and told the staff to just dump it in some corner. Laria was pissed that she'd been snatched for no reason and locked in a dark room. The heroine was plotting her escape from the Chryseum family estate ASAP. She knew she'd be changing back into a human soon and wouldn't be a pet anymore. Laria tried to get across that she was a beast person, but every attempt flopped. Days went by. She couldn't shift back, and all her hopes went down the drain. When she tried writing about herself in a notebook, they just joked that she'd learned to read and write. Laria couldn't take living there anymore, because she was getting more used to being a fox every day. She was scared she'd completely forget she was ever human. Laria knew Xenox wasn't interested, and one day, she decided to ditch the estate. When she found a way out, she saw Xenox hunting something unseen in the dark. She thought this guy had totally lost it, tearing down his own house like that. But then something jumped Xenox, and he just face-planted onto the floor, totally out cold. Laria felt bad for him, and forgetting all about escaping, she decided to help Xenox out. She pressed close to his chest, and hearing his heartbeat and breathing, she calmed down. After that, things between her and Xenox did a complete 180. And they became inseparable. Before, he hadn't given her the time of day, and only the servants bothered with her. The rest of her life was etched in her soul with a warm glow, and she happily went along with Xenox's crazy plan. From that day on, she decided to trust him completely, hoping he wasn't the monster everyone said he was. That same night, Laria's worried brother, Heldon Rohan, returned to the estate. He didn't even get inside before he heard that Laria was marrying Duke Chryseum. Samira told him the Duke and Laria were in love, but they'd announced they were calling off the wedding. Instead, the lovebirds want to get engaged, and Heldon's starting to think there's some blackmail involved. Laria's mom had the same thought, but seeing her daughter's face, she knew she was dead serious. According to Laria, her mom told her son that Xenox is super kind and caring, and that he really gets her. Heldon couldn't wrap his head around how his sister could fall for a war-obsessed nut job. Just the thought of Laria and Xenox being in the same room gave him the creeps. He decided he'd break them up, but then Laria might hold a serious grudge against him. Mom agreed with Heldon that would just throw fuel on the fire of their love. The parents had been thinking about this for a while, and they figured out a way to fix things without Laria hating them. Next time Samira meets Xenox, she'll slip him a potion that'll make him fall out of love with her daughter. After that, they'd all rally around Laria like a family and help her get over the sting of her first unrequited crush. Heldon was down with the plan, so all they had to do was track down this miracle potion. Samira told him that Theodore, being the master potion maker he is, would handle brewing it. The next day, Lyria was thinking about getting engaged to Xenox and wanted to make it happen ASAP. All the recent letters keep asking if the wedding rumors are true, which isn't surprising, considering it's about Duke Crassium. Laria was sorting through a pile of letters and found an invitation to a meeting of the Fox clan. The meeting's in 3 days, and it's the perfect excuse to meet with Xenox without raising any eyebrows. Thanks to the Duke's stones, Laria can now use magic, so she's gonna squash all the Fox clan's gossip about her. The Fox clan's born with magic, but every now and then, a fox pops out without any magical abilities. Laria's one of them, and her whole life she's heard rumors that she's a freak who can't transform. Her family always worried about her and never let her go to the Fox clan events. Because of that, Laria grew up without facing the scorn of society or other foxes. Now she wants to make some mage friends so they can gather info and experiment together. For the first time in years, she's agreed to attend one of her clan's gatherings. She headed to prepare for the meeting and ran into the Rohan family members outside her room. They looked way too suspicious, but tried to say they were just passing by. Laria didn't bother to investigate and announced to them that she was going to the Fox clan meeting in 3 days. Her parents were afraid she was using that as an excuse to meet with Duke Crassium. Laria told her family she wanted to befriend the foxes and showed them the invitation. A tear rolled down Theodore's cheek, and her father asked Laria to befriend him instead, because he's also from the Fox clan. Heldon and Samira thought Laria was wasting her time going to a fox meeting full of gossips. Laria decided she'd rather meet with Duke Xenox instead of going to that meeting. But then Heldon and her parents changed their minds and let her go to the clan event. Her brother told Laria to take a bodyguard and not to go anywhere without them. A couple days later, Laria Rohan put on her best outfit for this important event. She felt awkward going there with a guard, but she knew her family was just worried about her after she went missing. And then her personal guard, Rodette, arrived. He's a beast-like dog person. He looked like a little puppy, and Laria doubted he could protect her if things got hairy. Back then, the main character thought this long-awaited fox meeting would go off without a hitch. When she and Rodette got to the meeting place, the butler wouldn't let them in. He announced that neither she nor Rodette were on any of the guest lists. Laria couldn't believe she wasn't on the main list, especially since she knew her RSVP had been delivered to the foxes. She decided not to make a scene and asked the guard to double-check the lists himself. Together, they found Laria in the middle of the list, and the man apologized, explaining it was his mistake. A second later, the peony bushes parted, clearing a path for the arriving guests. On the way to the assembly hall, Laria asked Rodette to deliver a letter to the Crassium mansion. For her, this was a golden opportunity to get some important intel to Duke Xenox. The Crassium estate wasn't far, so Rodette headed there, leaving Laria alone. The girl walked down several long paths, but still couldn't find her way to the mansion. She stopped amidst the tall bushes and suddenly felt a heavy, magical energy. She spotted the illusions layered here, but this magic's got holes you could drive a truck through. Even a newbie mage like Laria could tear through this stuff, no sweat. Our girl figured this test was cooked up for her by her own Fox clan. She blasted through the magic blocking the meeting hall and instantly saw a mob of foxes. Everyone there was floored that Laria showed up at their meeting after all these years. They knew her powers only just kicked in, not nearly enough to bust through their magical defenses. The whispers from all these strangers made the girl super uneasy. She wanted to find some familiar faces to chat with, and then she spotted a redhead in the crowd. Sienna Hashul of the Red Fox clan had known Laria for years. Her dad, Marquis Hashu, used to run the Magic Council, and Sienna inherited a ton of his power. After the small talk died down, the guests noticed Laria and gave her a friendly greeting. All the foxes offered her a seat at the table, but Laria's chair suddenly vanished. Laria didn't want to make a scene, especially not at her first meeting, so she kept it cool. She pulled out a gemstone, waved her hand, and whispered the magic words. When she tossed the stone away, a tree sprouted from it, which then transformed into a chair. The girl wasn't thrilled that every fox at the gathering seemed to want to test her magical abilities. One of the guys called her out for being proud of such basic magic, saying what she did was just parlor tricks. Sienna Hashul was running the show, and she quickly shut everyone up. Speaking for the whole group, she apologized to Laria and thanked her for attending the meeting. Sienna took away from this that even the simplest magic can come in handy. So, the main topics at the meeting were all about praising Sienna and how awesome the Fox clan is. Even though they've got a magical prodigy like Sienna, the Foxes are still bummed out. If they had the Fox Pearl, they would have taken care of the Wolf clan and Duke Xenox a long time ago. The Foxes wouldn't have to watch their backs around other clans, and they could get back to their glory days eventually. One of the guys there gave Laria a suspicious look and announced he wanted to find that Fox Pearl. The relic's been missing from their clan for ages, and this dude's ready to start a war to get it back where it belongs. Sienna glanced at Laria and figured maybe someone's been secretly holding on to the pearl. The main character tried not to show her anxiety because she was afraid of revealing her secret. The Fox Pearl is the Fox clan's sacred treasure, and it can control any magic because of its mysterious power. This Fox Pearl was recently a family heirloom of the Crassium house, and now it's chillin' in Laria's stomach. The girl remembered the day she accidentally absorbed the pearl into herself. After Duke Xenox kidnapped her, Laria, as a fox cub, found the Fox Pearl in the Crassium estate. Later that night, because of a villain attack, she had to swallow it whole to survive. The heroine tried every possible way to get the pearl out, but it just wouldn't leave her body. Thanks to it, Laria could use magic, but it came with the condition of constantly spending gemstones. Judging by the conversations around her, they're desperate enough to do anything to get that pearl back. Sienna calmed the Foxes and admitted that the fate of the legendary treasure was unknown to their clan. She asked everyone to continue training hard to develop their abilities so they could all catch up to her level. Sienna confessed that she was the youngest mage in the history of the Magic Council, and Laria was shocked by that. The girl began to suspect that the mistress could control 3 spells simultaneously because of her bloodline. The younger Foxes were totally jealous of Sienna and her protective magic, which she was always showing off. She recently started practicing teleportation magic, and her prep time is down to just 10 minutes. All the Foxes were proud of their mistress, but Laria thought there was nothing to be proud of in that train wreck. Sienna can teleport to the next room in 10 minutes, but honestly, it's faster to just walk through the door. The main character figured the spell formula wasn't actually that hard to learn. She touched the manuscripts with the formula and instantly mastered teleportation. Sienna was glowing with pride and told Laria not to fall behind. She warned her not to get too into it, because Count Crazium isn't a fan of fox magic. Laria wasn't buying the sweet talk from people who see wolves as sworn enemies. She just figured they were jealous. The Foxes didn't like that one of them was involved with a black wolf, especially with all the crazy rumors about him being unstable. They think no sane fox would ever fall for a wolf, especially not Xenox Crassium. Suddenly, the butler showed up to Sienna with some seriously bad news about guests arriving. He was all worked up, saying Xenox was at the estate, which meant Laria's letter got to him. The butler told a freaked-out Sienna that Xenox was waiting for Miss Laria Rowan by the back entrance. Everyone there just went silent. They couldn't even begin to figure out what was going on. Our girl stood up tall, apologized to Sienna, and got ready to head out. She announced that from now on, she'd be at every single Fox clan meeting. She tossed a blue stone in the air, and it made a portal for her to travel through. Everyone realized Laria didn't need any time to get her teleport skill ready. Unlike Sienna, the portal spat Laria out into the garden, and she lost her balance, falling right into Xenox's arms. Duke Crassium was way too close, and the heroine felt her heart skip a beat. Just then, her personal guard rushed up, ready to protect her from that big bad wolf. Laria told him she was fine, and that Duke Xenox was a close friend. Rodette hinted that this meeting could be risky, and his words threw Xenox for a loop. Xenox was feeling uneasy about her showing up at the enemy Fox clan's gathering. Laria herself asked Xenox to escort her, so they could discuss unfinished business. She looked flustered and happy at the same time, so Xenox decided they should talk somewhere else. A few minutes later, they arrived at the Crassium estate, and Rodette, as a pup, stayed behind in the carriage to wait. The heroine hadn't been here since she left, but the garden and grounds were exactly the same. She always loved watching the yellow sunflowers bloom a little more each day from her window. Laria met a lot of good people here, and sometimes she misses this place. As the hero stepped inside, the girl felt a heavy, magical energy pressing down on her. There were traces of magic around Xenox, and the mansion reeked of stagnant energy. Laria was on edge because of what she was feeling, and Xenox got pissed at her suspicious behavior. The butler reported to the Duke that the estate would be cleaned to a shine, as per his orders. Laria apologized to Xenox and explained that her weird behavior wasn't because of the icky atmosphere. She decided to tidy things up with magic, because she knew the Duke would pay her in precious gems. As soon as she cast the first spell, the whole mansion started shaking like it was an earthquake. That's when Xenox and the butler saw the heroine unleash magic that was seriously powerful. Minutes later, Laria explained that someone had put a curse on the mansion, which she'd just wiped out. The butler and Xenox didn't respond, and the girl wondered if she'd just imagined the magic. Everyone there suddenly felt the air in the mansion shift, like Shiro had reappeared. Laria asked Xenox for permission to search the entire mansion for traces of magic. The butler offered to escort her, but Xenox forbade it and took on the task himself. The hero hugged Laria and, for the first time since Shiro's disappearance, gave a genuine smile. The main character thought Xenox unconsciously sensed her love for Shiro when he was near her. At the table, Xenox apologized to Laria for getting too close to her earlier. The girl wasn't bothered by the gesture at all, because according to legend, they're destined lovers. Xenox was curious about the magic surrounding his mansion and why Laria handled it so easily. The heroine had never seen such an aura from one of the most forbidden spells, the kind steeped in darkness. Her theory is that someone from the outside came to the mansion and laid down a curse here. Xenox confessed that lately, he's been having a hard time controlling the beast within. They quickly found him armor that helps him keep his wild side in check. When Laria touched the armor, Xenox saw traits of his beloved pet in her. Laria deduced that enchanted objects had been regularly brought to the mansion for a long time. She advised Duke Xenox to hire an experienced mage to avoid any repercussions. However, the best mages come from the Fox clan, and they don't take requests from black wolves. The girl understood this perfectly, because she used to have a negative attitude towards wolves herself. She found another option and offered Xenox her regular assistance. The Duke was fine with inviting her over a few times a week, as long as their engagement was still on. It'll be tough finding an excuse to see Laria after the engagement, but she wants to sort out this magic ASAP. She wasn't just doing it out of the goodness of her heart for Xenox. There was something in it for her, too. She claimed her magic guzzled precious gems like crazy, and Xenox would have to foot the bill for her efforts. The hero agreed to help and was ready to shower her with as many gems as she needed for the magic. Later, she realized she'd inherit a diamond mine after the engagement, so she agreed to work for free. Even though she can't reveal who she really is, she wants to help her future fiancé in some way. Despite what happened before, Laria's actually starting to fall for Xenox a little bit. For hours, they searched for something that could channel the magic, but didn't find anything special. While searching, Laria spotted her favorite toy, and a wave of old memories washed over her. The girl didn't sense any traces of magic or a curse in the mansion. There's one more spot in the estate that Xenox suspects. Because of the heavy energy, Laria was so lost in her memories, she didn't even notice they'd reached this room. If we open this door and head up to the third floor, we'll find a place that's basically a raging inferno. Xenox admitted there was a fire in the library a few years back, and it's still a total disaster. Laria was afraid this room might hold evidence, and everyone would find out she took the fox pearl. Xenox opened the library door, and the heroine pretended to feel faint. Noticing her distress, the Duke slammed the door shut and said he was embarrassed to show such a mess. Laria thought Xenox was lying, and that he just wanted to test her true feelings. For a while, Xenox had been experiencing some issues, which calmed down after she touched him. He's been having some inner turmoil and seeing things lately that have been really messing with him. He couldn't figure out how to get rid of the symptoms that were driving him nuts. Later, Xenox managed to suppress some of the symptoms with the fox pearl. The moment Laria touched him, he felt the pearl's power from Larry, and figured she had somehow been in contact with Shiro. The hero didn't even realize he was starting to suspect that Larry Rohan was Shiro. He knew his beloved little fox was a real fox, not some kind of animal person. Even a mutant like Xenox can't stay in beast form for more than a few days. If Laria Rohan was that little fox, she would have given herself away the first time they met. Xenox was tormented by awful thoughts and suspicions, and he regretted leaving Shiro behind. If he'd taken the little fox with him back then, Shiro Whiteley would be by his side right now. He didn't know if his pet blamed him for the Duke leaving her alone in the mansion, or if she outright hated him. Shira had tried to ditch the Duke before, but she only managed to pull it off the day of the fire. Xenox swore to himself that if he ever found his beloved fox, he'd never let her go again. After searching the mansion, Laria can't bring herself to go meet with Xenox. She felt like the Duke suspected something when her whole body started shaking in front of the library. Suddenly, Tsurike, her messenger raven, flew into her window with some important news. It was a sign that Laria needed to stop dwelling on useless stuff and get back to work. Tsurike told the main character to get her act together and come see him immediately about an urgent matter. This time, his client is Sienna the Red Fox from the White Fox tribe. Meanwhile, Sienna cast a spell and this time shortened the travel time through space. She was afraid to admit that she was weaker than the new mage, Laria Rohan. The underlings were acting like Sienna was some kind of top-tier mage, totally blown away by her new, powerful spell. They were saying Sienna would be climbing to the very top of the Magic Council in no time. Samanda, a high-ranking mage on the council, has spent her whole life studying magic formulas, and she's never seen anything like this. Sienna was pissed that even Samanda was in the top 5 of the Magic Council. It took the heroine way too long to get her spatial movement down to Laria's level. She was convinced Laria was pulling something shady, so she went to see Tsurike, the Black Raven. She ordered Tsurike to find the right person for her assignments. Tsurike presented the best specialist, conveniently leaving out that it was Laria Rohan, the White Fox. Sienna asked the girl to take off her hood, but the stranger said she had a policy of keeping her identity secret. Sienna didn't know how she was supposed to trust someone who wouldn't even show her their face. Tsurike calmed her down, explaining that his company only recommends people who've been thoroughly vetted. Sienna demanded the specialist prove their skills so she could actually trust them. A worried Laria explained that she wasn't strong enough, so she had to back out of this assignment. Sienna snapped at her, saying that in this place, the client calls the shots. Right then, the heroine, with Tsurike's permission, took the best specialist with her. She created a spatial portal and didn't even need any time to prepare. Sienna's spatial magic transported the girl to another location, and it wasn't Laria's magic. Sienna and Laria ended up in a training hall to test the heroine's abilities. Red Fox lowered her voice and asked the specialist to show off their best spell. The main character just wanted to play Sienna's game as quickly as possible and get out of there. The fox was giving the girl grief, saying she couldn't even handle the simplest spell. Just then, Laria conjured up a magic seal in her hand, a basic attack spell that sets up a triple defense barrier. The magic wrecked the nearby building columns, but Sienna remembered the magic of this place was created by top-tier mages. She didn't think that this newbie could break down the column's protective properties. Laria was worried she'd have to pay for the damage to the building, but Sienna calmed her down, saying she'd cover all the costs. After the destruction, Red Fox decided right then and there she wasn't letting this top magic specialist get away. She'd been training for months and couldn't even scratch the floor here. But Laria, without any extra training, made a basic spell in one move and wrecked the wall. Sienna apologized for being rude and said the Magic Council was taking care of the repairs on the building. She didn't know where this guy had been hiding all this time, but she was definitely going to get him for her own plans. She asked the main character for at least a name, and she gave a fake one. Lily. Sienna loved the name and wanted to lock down a partnership right then and there. Laria shot her down hard, saying she was done with Red Fox jobs for good. Sienna was desperate to keep her, so she pulled out all the stops and prepped an amazing deal. She offered 10 times the usual pay and said she'd cover all the extra expenses. Once the talk turned to gemstones, Laria jumped at the offer without a second thought. The main character got her first assignment: dig up dirt on Laria and tail her around the clock. Soon after, Laria went back to Tsurike and accused him of knowing all along that Sienna was digging into her. The guy admitted that, even knowing what was up, he still would have called Laria and didn't think he'd done anything wrong. The main character asked him to give her a heads up about stuff like this, and Tsurike got weirdly pissed at her. He slammed his fist on the table and told Laria she promised him she wouldn't marry Duke Crasium, and that's why he's pissed. When Laria went and announced the engagement in the papers, Tsurike took a massive hit. The heroine admitted it was her fault, and Tsurike offered her a way to make up for his losses. He had a suitable job for Laria to cover it, but she wasn't exactly jumping at the chance. First, she listened to all the job's terms and found out she had to guard some high-ranking nobleman. A few days later, she learned the job was connected to Duke Xenox, who's her fake fiancé. When they met, Xenox Crasium admitted he had been waiting for this meeting for 10 days. The job came in 3 days ago, and Laria screwed up by not asking Tsurike who the client was. She asked the Duke to pretend she's just Lily's bodyguard, not the daughter of a noble family. She was pleasantly surprised that Xenox took her advice and was considering security for the mansion. Xenok noticed some stalker had been tailing him lately, always popping up when he wasn't paying attention. The hero knew he'd be safe and sound with Laria, a top-notch mage, as his bodyguard. Some dude started following him a few days back, but so far he hasn't tried anything. The hero led the girl inside the mansion, telling her he had some seriously important business today. Once inside, Laria saw the servants bowing low to her and Xenok. Behind the servants, she spotted wedding dresses for Laria and a suit for the Duke. The servants were thrilled to tailor the garments to fit His Highness's beloved perfectly. They'd also prepped rings and earrings for the bride as a wedding gift. Laria tried to play it cool, like she was just a bodyguard. But everyone there knew who she really was. Xenok reassured them and announced that she was his important companion who deserved their utmost respect. He told Laria that today was super important because he was picking out a gift for his bride-to-be. He had no clue what he'd done wrong, but his fiancée hadn't even looked at him for like 10 days. The hero got Laria a gorgeous, expensive dress and promised he'd try even harder from now on. The main character apologized to the Duke and said she'd been tied up with some really important stuff. Xenok wanted Laria to think about him every single minute, no matter how busy she was. Laria promised to write letters, even when she was swamped. It was crucial to the Duke that his future bride liked the outfit he'd spent so much time picking out. Laria's heart started pounding like crazy, and she felt this warm flutter inside. She thought she might actually be falling for the guy who, not that long ago, straight up kidnapped her. Ever since that thing with the library, Xenok freaks out every time Laria's behavior takes a sudden turn. The hero's conversation was cut short when Laria sensed a dark, murderous aura in the mansion. She told the Duke to get somewhere safe and started to suspect a stalker had broken into the place. A stranger walked into the estate, and everyone around him froze, stunned by what they saw. It was Laria's older brother, Hilden, and he was furious about Xenok's betrayal. That night, when Laria brought Xenok and told him the shocking news, the Rohan family's plan was set in motion. The family was pulling out all the stops to make sure the Duke cut ties with Laria for good. The family had already cooked up a potion using top-shelf ingredients, so there wouldn't be any nasty side effects. The emotion control stuff won't kick in until the target hits a certain point. The target has to be someone from the Rohan clan, and Xenok has to spill the beans on their name after he takes the elixir. The Rohan family needs to get the Duke to drink up, without Laria getting even a whiff of what's going on. If this whole thing blows up, she'll never even look at her family again. Hilden was pissed that his sister picked Xenok out of all the guys in town. Before putting his plan into action, Hilden decided to tail Xenok. He wants to find the Duke's weakness, something the Rohan family can use later. So he arrived at the Crescium estate and thought he caught Xenok cheating. He couldn't believe the girl with the Duke was his sister, Laria. He brought a potion to break them up, and Laria spotted him by accident. Our girl made her older brother apologize to the Duke for what happened earlier. Xenok hugged Laria and told Hilden he forgave him for the misunderstanding. Even so, Duke Crescium was still hostile towards his future bride's brother. Laria was trying to explain to Xenok that Hilden wasn't actually a threat. As an apology, Hilden announced to Xenok that he was inviting him to visit the Rohan family estate. Laria's family responsibly prepared for the Duke's arrival and cleaned the whole house until it sparkled. Laria Rohan didn't yet know that her family was planning to woo the Duke. She wanted to wear the dress Xenok had given her, but her mother was against it, saying that Laria would instantly captivate the Duke in that outfit. Her father liked Laria's outfit, but her brother thought it was a little too revealing. The heroine got annoyed and said she'd change into pajamas if this conversation didn't stop. In the end, the family agreed on the dress, since they didn't want Xenok to see her in pajamas. The butler burst into the hall, announcing to the family that Grand Duke Xenok Crescium had arrived. Laria was anxious about Xenok having to spend the day with her family. The hero rolled up to the Rohan family estate in a carriage decked out with like 1,000,000 jewels. The kid figured it'd be rude to show up empty-handed, so he brought Laria a little something. All her relatives nearly fainted because they were expecting a really extravagant gift. Xenok agreed to read out the list of gifts, which included wine, age-defying herbs, a porcelain tea set, and a bunch of other stuff. The main girl thought the Duke shouldn't have gone to so much trouble for her family. The dude just gave a bashful apology and suggested Laria accept just one thing: the deed to a villa at a swanky resort down south. He'd already signed the villa over to Laria and said the whole Rohan family could use it for vacation. Laria's parents and Hilden were ticked off because the Grand Duke's generosity totally messed up their scheme. Laria felt totally bummed, but she had to keep playing the bride role till the end of the day. She hugged Xenox and thanked him, all flustered, for the awesome gifts. That hug caught her whole family off guard, and Laria immediately felt a dark vibe coming from them. Samira tried to lighten the mood, offering their guest her favorite dessert. It was Laria's least favorite cookie, and they usually never served it when she was at the estate. Samira laughed and admitted she'd had those cookies baked especially for the Duke. Laria saw her mother's smile and suspected she was up to no good with Xenox. She wanted to stop the Duke from eating the cookie, but it was already too late. The Grand Duke ate one cookie and thanked Lady Samira, saying it was delicious. He offered the Countess one out of politeness, but she declined. Xenox was starting to suspect something fishy too, but he didn't let on. He took a cookie and offered it to Laria, testing her family. The deal is, to trigger the love potion, the target has to be someone you love, or a Rohan family member. After eating the potion-laced food, Xenox needs to say the name of a Rohan family member. Once he did that, Samira was ecstatic, thinking all the conditions were met. The potion's in the cookie, and Samira made it special, cause Laria wouldn't touch it. After lunch, Samira told the Duke her daughter should marry someone who truly loves her. Already knowing the answer, she asked the guest if he loved her daughter. Xenox got a little flustered and admitted he's been in love with Laria since the first time he saw her. It seemed to all the Rohan family members that the potion hadn't worked, and all their efforts were wasted. They started suspecting the servants of forgetting to add the potion to the cookies. Something wasn't adding up, and Samira decided to test the potion's effect on herself. She scarfed down a few cookies and didn't even have to name a single family member. A second later, she blew a fuse and told her husband she wanted a divorce, ASAP. Through his tears, Theodore tried to tell Samir it was the potion talking, but she wasn't hearing it. Hilden calmed his dad down, saying they could use the antidote, and Mom would come to her senses. Hearing that, the main character realized her family was trying to slip Xenox a potion. Hilden apologized to their guest and asked him to step outside while he talked to Laria. Her brother confessed that their parents cooked up a potion to make Xenox fall out of love with Laria, and they slipped it in the cookies. Dad promised the potion was good for him and wouldn't have any side effects. Only now did Laria realize why her parents and Hilden hadn't been pushing her to break up with Xenox. Lately, she'd been happy, thinking they respected her choices. Samira proudly told Theodore she was ditching this mansion tonight, getting a divorce, and leaving for good. Theodore brewed the potion for Xenox, and in his current state, he can't whip up an antidote. Laria took pity on the family and announced she could handle brewing the antidote herself, since she's got the skills. She knew that potion didn't work on Xenox, because their engagement is just a temporary arrangement. Grand Duke Xenox Crassium definitely doesn't love her, because his heart only holds the image of Shiro Whitey. She didn't think she'd actually fall for Xenox as hard as she has. You need basic magic skills to make any kind of love potion. Hilden's a fantastic doctor, but he doesn't have any magical ability, so he couldn't brew a potion like that. The only people who can pull it off are Laria and her father, Theodore, because they're magic users. Luckily, our girl knew the recipes and whipped up 2 vials of the antidote in a matter of minutes. The first vial was for Samira. After drinking it, she came back to her senses. Her husband Theodore no longer seemed like a terrible guy, and she didn't want to leave him anymore. Laria went to escort Duke Xenox home and promised her family a serious talking to when she got back. She always knew her family loved making a scene, but this situation was way over the top. Her parents are trying to keep her and Xenox apart, and she's going to demand an apology from them. Soon, she went to the living room to see the Duke off, but he was nowhere to be found. Instead, there was a little black wolf cub sitting on the floor, and he immediately gave himself away. It was Duke Xenox, who couldn't figure out why he'd suddenly turned into an animal. Laria was an experienced mage, so she didn't need explanations, because she immediately understood that it was a side effect of the love potion. She felt genuinely bad for Xenox that her own family had stooped so low. In Laria's sad eyes, Xenox saw a look that was precious to his heart. Shiro Whitey always gave him a similar look whenever she got into trouble. The Duke is sure Lady Rohan is connected to Whitey's location, because he gets this weird sense of déjà vu every time he's near her. Laria brought Xenox the antidote, but the poor guy couldn't drink it because of his paws. So, she decided to carefully feed it to him from her hands, just like the Duke used to feed her. Laria's brain knows that this isn't a real wolf pup, but the tall and intimidating Xenox. She confessed to him that he looked way too cute in that black wolf pup form. The Duke was pissed at Luria for saying that, so she held him up to his own reflection. Now she gets how Duke Xenox felt when he touched his little fox, Shiro. The black wolf pup didn't understand why he suddenly lost his human form. Laria calmed him down, explaining the antidote would help him get back to his old self soon. She asked Xenox how he was feeling after the antidote, and he admitted he didn't feel any different. The girl was scared her beloved would never change back. She was afraid she'd complicated things for him, and promised to find a way out of this mess ASAP. She got incredibly bummed out, and the little wolf pup tried to comfort her by nuzzling her. Xenox asked Laria to hide him at her family's estate until he changed back. If word got out that he was like this, the enemies of Crasium would jump at the chance to take him down. Laria was already thinking the same thing, and the Duke was grateful for her help. Later, she went back to her family and called them out for using that potion behind her back. Samira was hoping to split up Laria and Xenox before she got her heart broken. My folks were ready to apologize to the Duke, but only if Laria broke off the engagement. In their eyes, no parent in their right mind would want their kid hitched to a guy like that. Theodore saw the love potion didn't work on Xenox, which meant the dude doesn't love Laria at all. The girl asked her dad if the potion had any side effects, like turning someone into a beast or something. Theodore said that the wrong conditions could cause glitches and side effects, but those cases are rare. He asked his daughter to imagine a love potion that only works on living people. The heroine pictured Duke Xenox and realized if the person drinking is alive, their brain could be dead. With Xenox, the conditions are contradictory. Because he doesn't love Laria, he loves Whitey, who is Laria. It's totally possible the Duke's love for his pet fox is what caused him to transform into a beast. But to him, Whitey must look like a thief who stole a family heirloom. If he feels anything for that fox kid, it's pure animosity and hate. Her dad calmed her down, saying most side effects wear off in a couple of days. Laria was stoked that Xenox would definitely be back to his real self after a while. Meanwhile, the Duke, stuck as a black wolf pup, searched the entire Rohan estate. He was convinced there's some kind of connection between the Rohan clan and that fox kid, Whitey. He always senses that fox sphere energy whenever he's around Lady Rohan. It's the only lead he's got so far, but maybe it'll help him get Whitey back. That evening, Laria went back to Xenox and told him he'd be back to normal in a few days. She also announced that her family, the Rohans, were insisting they break off their engagement. Xenox didn't expect his fake fiancé to actually be bummed out about that news. Even though it was a fake engagement, Laria felt like she could finally leave her past kidnapper behind for good. The little black wolf cub climbed onto her lap, offering his head for a comforting pat. Whenever Laria was down, Whitey always let her pet him to cheer her up. The heroine asked the Duke why he was looking for his little fox, and it immediately triggered memories from his past. All the rumors swirling around Duke Crasium were at least half true, to say the least. Most animals wouldn't even dare get close to Xenox because of their primal survival instincts. Lately, the Duke had been losing it more and more, and his mind was being taken over by terrible hallucinations. In them, he saw himself single-handedly ending the war and getting revenge for his beloved parents' deaths. He was told that this war wasn't over and would drag on for years to come. The day Laria found Xenox unconscious, the voices were telling him to tear down his own mansion. When Xenox came to, he saw his pet fox, Shiro White, coming towards him. Laria, in her animal form, snuggled against his legs and tried to bring him back to his senses. The hero didn't understand why, after all his harshness, the fox cared about him. An alarmed butler rushed in after hearing Xenox fall, but the hero said it was nothing serious. He reflexively grabbed the fox by the scruff of its neck, showing how little he cared. For the first time, he asked the butler what the fox's name was, and the servant replied that it was called Fluffy. From then on, Xenox kept looking for that fox, for no real reason. He wondered if she was still as fearless as she was on that fateful day. Whenever the fox demanded food from him, the Duke would chase her away with threats. Nevertheless, the fox in her form continued to demand care from Xenox, but he tried to ignore her completely. One day, the hero felt a warmth in his heart and personally cooked a meal for his pet. It was the first time Laria in the Crasium estate had tasted such delicious food, made specifically for the little fox. But even then, the Duke warned her that she'd regret it if she ever showed him kindness again. After that, Whitey sometimes came to Xenox, but he threatened to turn her into a scarf or knit her into a sweater. All those days were the same. But the Duke and Duchess's Memorial Day changed Laria and Xenox's relationship. It was the day Xenox's life was practically ripped away because of his parents' horrible death. That day, the young master's guard arrived with a report that his parents were no longer alive. The Duke and Duchess's bodies were so mangled, people didn't believe a child could become the head of the family. Even back then, Xenox decided he'd just wipe out everyone responsible for his parents' deaths. On their Memorial Day, the little fox, sensing the pain in Xenox's heart, brought him a sunflower to comfort him. This time, the master didn't chase the pet away, because he saw support in its eyes. For the first time in years, the little fox Shiro let Xenox pat him on the head. It was then the Duke realized that the name Fluffy didn't suit such a good pet. He announced the new name, Whitey Shiro, which the little fox seemed to like. At some point, having the fox around became an everyday part of Xenox's life. And life without Whitey became a living hell. He looked for her in the capital and in other cities, but kept coming back, hoping Whitey might return any minute. The current Xenox Crassium touched Laria when he said he was looking for Whitey just because he needed her. She put the black wolf cub to bed and went to her room to think about the situation. She was afraid to believe that the kidnapper was looking for her just because he missed her. Laria tried to convince herself that Xenox only wanted the family heirloom, but his kind actions kept popping into her head. The heroine realized Xenox was going to need a ton of stuff now that he's living in her mansion. She decided to do a good deed and take him shopping tomorrow. The next morning, she snuck out of the house with Xenox so her family wouldn't freak out too much. Her parents already hated Duke Xenox, and if they found out he was the one who snatched her, they'd totally obliterate him. Laria absolutely couldn't let her parents or Hilden find out about the kidnapping. The heroine instantly created a portal and teleported to the nearest store. Today, she wanted to buy her sweet Xenox a carrier, a new brush for his fur, and some warm clothes in case it got chilly. The hero noticed that ever since he turned into a wolf, the lady had been smiling at him more genuinely. He'd been following Laria around the whole time, even using their marriage contract as an excuse to get closer. Last night, while she was asleep, he searched every nook and cranny of the Rohan estate and came up empty. He started to think the Rohan family really might not be involved with Whitey Shiro at all. So, Duke Xenox was back to square one, looking for his pet, and he was seriously bummed about it. Laria got spooked by how upset Xenox looked, so she scooped him out of the bag and carried him. Xenox always held Whitey like that, and Laria was trying to copy everything he did. After grabbing some stuff for the little Duke, Laria spotted a jewelry store. She was broke, but Xenox told her to just put everything on his family's tab. On the way back, they ran into His Highness, Crown Prince Ishwell. He wanted to chat with Laria privately about Xenox and how the search for Whitey was going. Our girl totally freaked and wanted to bail, but Xenox demanded the prince explain himself. Ishwell's guard showed up, all freaked out that the black wolf pup could talk. The prince asked Lady Rohan to explain why her pet knew how to speak. The girl was sure Ishwell recognized Xenox's voice, but that wasn't the case. Ishwell asked the wolf cub to prove who he was, and that's when Xenox spilled all his most embarrassing secrets. Xenox quickly explained the situation and asked Ishwell to tell him about the search for Whitey. The kid confessed that he recently had a dream where Xenox was hugging a white fox. On top of that, Ishwell had goat horns on his head, and he thinks the dream was a sign. Members of the royal family, who have the blood of the golden deer running through their veins, are born with the gift of foresight. Ishwell can't say for sure that the fox from his dream is Whitey. However, he recently got word that smugglers are back in business, and they even have a white fox now. There's an auction today where they're trying to sell this fox, and Xenox decided to head over there. Laria tried to stop him from going to the auction in his current, condition. But Ishwell figured it was the perfect chance for a sneaky infiltration that wouldn't raise any red flags. Little did he know, Laria knew Whitey wouldn't be at the auction, because she's hanging with Duke Xenox right now. To keep things from going sideways, she decided she'd go to the auction with little Xenox in tow. She's the only one who knows the whole story about his situation, so she can jump in and help if things get hairy. Xenox was worried Laria would end up in a dangerous spot because of him, and he couldn't help but show it. On the way, Prince Ishwell suggested Laria put Xenox, the black wolf pup, up as a lot at the auction. Black wolves are super rare, the kind of thing that smugglers would go absolutely bonkers for. As an animal, Xenox could snoop around all the white fox cages way easier without anyone getting suspicious. The little Duke liked the prince's idea and told Laria to go along with it. The security guard at the auction house entrance asked the arriving guests to show their invitations. Prince Ishwel, already wearing a concealing mask, announced they were there to sell an item. He said they had a valuable and rare little something that hadn't been seen in a century. Ishwel gave a great sales pitch about the endangered black wolf, and the guard was intrigued. The guy was drawn to Xenox's glossy black fur, his golden, sun-like eyes, and his young age. He was ready to pay anything just to get this item at his auction. Ishwel offered the guy 50 million, but Laria doubled the price. She figured the dealer's opinion would change drastically when he saw what this little wolf could do. She demonstrated how Xenox could shake, sit on command, and climb onto shoulders. The dealer bought Xenox for 150 million and allowed the guests to participate in the auction. In a few minutes, a guy named Black announced the start of the rare item auction. Laria felt uneasy that the Duke wasn't around, and Ishwel admitted she was the only one worried about Xenox. Ishwel wondered if the hero in his beast form could find his beloved Whitey, but Laria already knew the answer. Meanwhile, the smugglers tossed the white fox into one of the cages, and she gave them some nasty scratches. Suddenly, they heard that very cage burst open, and there was a small explosion. One of the smugglers hit the ground and wasn't moving anymore. The cage holding the white fox was wrecked, and the fox herself was gone. Oblivious, the host announced the sale of the next rare lot, the white gull. Just then, Madame Rohan felt that same deadly energy she'd sensed back at the Cresseum estate. She felt magic washing over her, the kind that messes with a person's head. She decided to focus and cast a spell first, so that guy wouldn't see her true form. Using the gemstone, she created a portal and ended up right in the middle of the audience. She didn't sense anything suspicious here, but she felt there was a sorcerer in the hall using forbidden magic. After he was discovered, the magical energy started to dissipate and return to its source. Laria grabbed her just in time and didn't let her slip away. She warned Crown Prince Ishwel and set off on the trail of the forbidden magic. The mage couldn't believe there was someone in the hall capable of resisting his devastating magic. He ran through a few streets and stumbled into a trap Laria had set. The man immediately realized that whoever was in the hall had been chasing him the whole time, trying to take him down. He couldn't even imagine that his opponent in this fight would be a girl who wasn't all that experienced with magic. Laria chanted the spell, and using the magic seal, absorbed this guy's forbidden magic. The mage reeked of seriously dark magical energy, and it was just like what she'd seen at the Cresseum estate. She figured this was the same dude who'd put the curse on the Duke's mansion way back when. She was worried she wouldn't have enough juice to stand up to that forbidden magic in this fight. All she had on her were 10 gemstones she'd picked up earlier at the jewelry store. She launched her first attack and heard the mage's voice, like a guy in his 40s. Laria needed to gather all her strength ASAP and land one clean shot on this mage. Just then, the other guy pulled out a vial of crimson liquid and splashed it on the ground. Laria caught a whiff of blood and realized he was going to use it to bring the whole auction house down. She couldn't let that happen, not with so many people inside, not to mention the prince and Xenox. Summoning every last ounce of her strength, she chanted the spell and threw up a massive protective barrier. That barrier stopped the master's devastating magic just before his spell could fully form. She burned through every crystal she had. If that attack hadn't worked, Laria would have been toast. It was the most magic she'd ever channeled at once, period. The mage using forbidden magic managed to slip away through the sewers, ending up in some basement. His plan was still on track, just delayed a little. That mage was the head of the Magic Bureau, Benicion Hashir, who knew Samanda pretty well. He didn't tell the team about his findings, or that some uninvited guest messed with him at the auction. Meanwhile, Laria got back to the prince, and the announcer was kicking off the bidding for a rare black wolf pup. He started the price at 200 million, even though he snagged Xenox for only 150 mil. During the bidding, Ishwel told Laria about Xenox's nickname, the Executioner. While searching for the fox cub in different cities, Xenox wiped out 100 smugglers. The host announced the arrival of a rare black wolf pup, but instead, Duke Cresseum appeared on stage. From Xenox's rage, Prince Ishwel realized his vision was wrong, and there was no fox here. The guards attacked the Duke, but he easily snapped their spears in half. All the spectators scrambled to escape, and even the auction host was seriously freaked out. A squad of soldiers arrived at the building and arrested the host for running an illegal auction. That made Xenox even angrier, and at that moment, Laria felt the fox pearl activate. The girl realized she was about to transform into a fox and bolted outside. She thought she'd never become a fox again, and she had no idea why it was happening. She tried to duck behind the nearest corner, but she was too slow, instantly poofing into Whitey the fox kit. After transforming into Whitey, Laria ran into Surike behind the auction house and begged him for help. Xenox's guards showed up, and then the Duke himself arrived. Having sensed the pearl's energy, he snatched a sword from one of his goons and sliced the tree where Tsurik and Whitey were hiding. He demanded Tsurik hand over the white fox kit, or things were going to get real unpleasant. But Tsurik explained the Duke had him confused with someone else, and this fox kit wasn't Whitey. Tsuriki said he'd raised this little one since she was born, and she'd always belonged to him and him alone. There are tons of white foxes in this world, and Laria couldn't figure out how the Duke recognized her right away. Xenox was hostile towards Tsuriki and was ready to take the fox kit by force. Tsurik reacted just in time, spilling a teleportation potion on the ground. With seconds to spare, Xenox managed to yell at Whitey to come back to him. Laria had never seen her former captor with such an anxious look on his face. She wanted to figure out why she'd suddenly transformed into a fox. If that happened in front of Xenox, Laria would be in deep trouble. She figured it had something to do with using so much magic in that fight. A couple of minutes later, she vibrated and shifted back into human form. For the first time, the heroine felt genuinely sorry for the Duke because of his sincere feelings for her. She realized that if he hated her, his face wouldn't show such touching emotions when looking at her. For the first time, Tsurik realized that the fox the Grand Duke was looking for was sitting right in front of him. During their conversation, the girl asked him to help her find the guy who's using forbidden magic. That mage from the Magic Council was a total wreck after that fight with Laria. His assistants were theorizing that a group of seriously powerful mages was behind it all. The guy also got a report that the enchantment on Cresium's mansion was gone, and that kind of spell ain't easy to break. The mage was convinced that the Grand Duke had been seriously influenced by that spell over the past year. This person wants to turn Xenox Cresium into a puppet and control him completely. Laria got back home and couldn't figure out why she was randomly shifting between fox and human. She was leaning towards it, being because of using so much magic. This morning, Hilden's brother apologized to her, admitting he was wrong about the whole Xenox situation. Laria decided to stop avoiding her family, and for the first time in forever, had breakfast with them. As a sign of reconciliation, her parents set out an apple for her, which is a symbol of apology. Looking at her family's faces, Laria felt for them and decided to forgive their mistake. Theodore and Samira promised to never mess with Grand Duke Cresium again. Through tears, her father confessed he was sad that his daughter had been avoiding him. Her brother was most ashamed of disrespecting his sister's choices. From that day on, every member of the Rohan family let bygones be bygones. Samira admitted she had no problem with the Duke and Laria getting engaged, but asked her daughter not to rush things. She wanted the wedding to be top-notch, and that would take a lot of time to plan. The next day, Tsuriki got busy making lists of everyone invited to the auction. It was important to him to find the guy using forbidden magic for Laria. She remembered that the guy had a middle-aged man's voice, and he was taller than her. Tsurik swore to her he'd do whatever it took to find this guy. After hours of digging through the lists, the kid figured out this guy's one of the Fox clan. A week had passed since the auction house incident, and Laria sent Xenox and Ishwal letters, explaining why she left. She asked them to keep their location a secret, but never heard back. If her brother found out who she was hanging out with, he'd blow a gasket. Laria couldn't just sit around any longer, so she grabbed a guard and headed to the ingredient shop. She needed to find a blue coral for an instant teleportation potion. Just then, Sienna, the red fox, suddenly walked into the store. She reached for the ingredient at the same time as Laria, and it was the only one left. Laria's guard stepped up to defend his lady, declaring she touched the blue coral first. The girl's bodyguards started arguing, and our main girl tried to break it up. She asked the vendor if he had another blue coral, the one they call blue horn. The vendor told her it wasn't the season for it, and the next shipment wouldn't be in for about 3 months. Sienna was stoked that Laria wasn't just good with magic, but also knew her stuff about ingredients. She suggested a solution. The shop owner gets to decide who gets the coral. The vendor promised he'd pick whoever touched the ingredient first. Sienna was ready to just head to another shop, one with better quality ingredients. Laria decided to give way to her old acquaintance and offered her the blue horn. Sienna was blown away by the heroine's gesture and promised she'd owe her one. Laria was curious what potion Sienna was cooking up this time and checked out her ingredients. She figured out it was going to be a potion that turns your hair gold, and Sienna couldn't wrap her head around how she got busted.